Okay, so the deity of God and Christ. I found something that's a bit different and goes into a little bit more finer detail. Now we will stand before God and give an account of what we did in the body. This is what's important. What we did in the body, whether good or bad. This is what will be brought before the deity of Christ and God. It's a judicial seat, but it's not punitive. Our salvation is sealed right from the get-go, being chosen in Christ before the disruption. It's what we did in the body, whether good or bad, that will be illuminated in that day. Okay, the setting right of every matter and act is a question of with which God will deal ere his ultimate is attained. Even in the case of the saints, it's not a matter which is avoided or evaded. The great white throne, judging, will effectually settle all matters as regards those who appear before its session. But none who claim the salvation which is in Christ Jesus by faith will be amongst the number who will stand there. At the deity of God, the proceedings are entirely different from those of the great white throne. And in the case of the saints, there are features which are entirely lacking in the case of those who come before the great white throne. What eventuates from the deity is not therefore to be compared with, for it is God's saints who appear before him. Evangel ensures salvation. The Evangel has taught us that we enjoy the greatest possible benefits through it, and these may be tersely summed up in that precious statement. Nothing consequently is now condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. Romans 8:1. We readily rejoice then that our God in Christ Jesus has so firmly and irrevocably settled that problem to our blessing and his own glory. We cannot come into any position which will minimize salvation or take it from us. Salvation is not decided before the deity, and it is not in any sense in question there. Why therefore do we read of our presentation at the deity of God in Romans 14:10, and our manifestation at the deity of Christ in 2 Corinthians 5:10? The deity examines our walk. The use of the term judgment seat has tended to give them a misleading color to this statement. The word tribunal has been suggested, but there are features of its usage which make it unsuitable. The term of the original is conveyed by dais or platform. These are quite impartial words. Literally, it is a standing room afforded for establishing a definite position. There one steps to state their case with a view to its examination by the Lord. 1 Corinthians 4:4, and the setting right of any necessary items thereof. This is prior to his award. Whilst not a judicial bench for condemnation, few of us seem to have attained to a clear appreciation of its function, or the reason for it in God's dealings with his saints. In coming to this position of the Roman epistle, it were well if we make some attempt to obtain at least a broad understanding. Salvation incomplete until the body is delivered. The body of our humiliation needs to be changed in order to be able to stand at that deity of Christ. The question of having to step before the deity of God arises from our walk, to the extent to which we truly express the Evangel in our living. In our progress through the Roman epistle, we have seen that as saints we are to walk in the newness of life. At the same time, though sin's body has become inert, sin is not yet eliminated from our flesh. We are to reckon ourselves dead to sin and alive to God in Christ. Romans 6:4-11. For we await a future deliverance of our body, which is our salvation, when our salvation becomes a completed matter. Romans 8:23. Our bodies to be presented to God. Meanwhile, our logical divine service is to present our bodies a living sacrifice, holy, well-pleasing to God. And insofar as we are transformed by the renewing of our mind, we shall escape configuration to this eon. which position will be most estimable when we are manifested at the dais. Romans 12, 1 and 2. Obedience to faith is our divine service. Saints, though blessed of God, continue to live in the world. 1 Corinthians 5:10. They are not exempt from the ordinary relations and duties to other humans. In fact, their faith really makes all their living a divine service. Every bit of it, 24/7, in spirit. Here we touch the aspect which is little appreciated, for we have a distinct tendency to regard divine service as applying only to those engaging specifically in labor of pastors, teachers, and evangelists. Ephesians 4:11. Such are certainly rendering service to God and his saints, yet it is special, being a distinct gift from God. 1 Corinthians 9:17. In the initial consideration, divine service consists in our obedience to the faith. It is our practical living of the evangel in regard to our fellow saints, to our enemies, to humans in general, and to the state, or wherever you live. Precepts are examples of faith's activities. Romans 12-16 show the evangel in practice. Precepts are given as examples of practicing of the prior stated doctrine. They detail a divine service which rationally corresponds to our life in Christ. In one sense, they may be corrective of any disobedience to the faith, and an exhortation to proper conduct in the Lord. Any doubt as to the proper course is resolved by the precepts. This is amazing stuff and deep truth. Before the dais we give account to God. Life for the believer is not a casual matter, but calls for the most serious considerations. Before the dais we are to give account to God. Romans 14:11 and 12. This is for his glory, and should also be for our fullest blessing. When we bow the knee and acclaim God before his dais, it ought to be the climax of what we have been effecting in our living. For if we have followed the leading of the Spirit of his Son, Romans 8:14. Okay, so tomorrow we'll continue with this little article. It's good. It goes into detail and it gives a clear understanding of what is actually corrected before the dais of God and Christ. Grace and peace.